So thank you everyone for joining us on day 3 of the National Coaches Week Atlantic Virtual Conference. We're really excited to have you all on here. And as mentioned the past 2 days, usually we're driving around the province meeting with coaches and offering in-person PD. But due to COVID, we have decided to offer a virtual conference. So we hope this is reaching more Nova Scotians, and we can see that it is reaching more people across the country, which is wonderful. So first off, I would like to say on behalf of Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic that we would like to acknowledge that our office and where I'm currently residing is in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we are aware that there's people, once again, joining from all over the country. So we welcome you guys to share where you currently reside in the chat box. Also, I'd like to recognize that all the people that have made this possible. So Coach New Brunswick, Coaching Newfoundland, Coach NS, Coaching PEI, and of course, all our support in Nova Scotia, so the Government of Nova Scotia, Sport Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia Gaming. And for those who don't know me, my name is Kirsty. I'm the Community Coaching Lead at Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic. So here is our lineup for tonight. And first off, we have Isabel Kaye. So Isabel is the Director of Sport Safety at the Coaching Association of Canada and provides leadership and expertise in the areas of safe sport, professional coaching, and the responsible coaching movement. She leads the development of programs and initiatives in women in coaching, including mentorship and apprenticeships, research, policy work, and raises awareness of the importance of diversity and inclusion within the sport community in Canada. An NCCP certified former figure skating coach, she currently contributes to coach development as a learning facilitator and master coach developer for the Coaches Association of Ontario, and as a woman and leadership facilitator for Canadian Women in Sport. So we're really excited to have Isabel on here today to talk to us more about women in sport and how we can work together to create gender equity. So the title of Isabel's presentation is Where Are All the Women? So I will stop sharing my screen now. And Isabel, you should be able to share from here and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Kirsty. And thanks to all the coaches that are online tonight. And I just want to acknowledge that it's National Coaches Week. So thanks coaches for your time and your commitment and your dedication to developing people. You just play such a great role in your communities, in society at large, and in developing a nation. So I just want to recognize the great work that you do and how much of a positive influence you have on the next generation of athletes and coaches and leaders in Canada. So thanks a lot for that. And I'm going to get started with my presentation. So make sure this works. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. All right. So, you know, keeping with the theme of National Coaches Week and the work that's happening in Atlantic Canada, just wanted to focus a little bit around women in particular, women in coaching, but certainly just a lot of the talk that's going around in terms of diversity and inclusion. So a little bit about that. So essentially, you know, just trying to create a safe space for us to talk, and really feel free to ask questions at any time. So I welcome you to write them in the chat. Kirsty can let me know when there's a question, but we can certainly also save it for the end. There's a lot of time at the end, but if you just don't want to forget your question, go ahead and put it in and we'll get to it. And, you know, just there'll be more conversations, and certainly open to further discussions with you. And please feel free to reach out to me if you need to on my email. So just to get started, it was just to get things going. If you feel just in your own environments, whether it's in a sport organization or your work or other, do you feel, or do you have a sense or an awareness that girls and women are underrepresented? I'll just leave that to if people want to put that in the chat, if they have it. Kirsty, you can just let me know. It can just be yes or no.
A couple people have put in the chat box, yes.
Okay.
Quite a few, actually. Yes, a lot.
Okay.
A lot of yeses.
All right. Okay, great. Well, not really great, but Thanks for participating. Okay, so today I really just wanted to cover a few things. Just want to talk a little bit about diversity inclusion, a little around the bigger picture, highlight a few barriers and facilitators for women in coaching, and what I've put in as the 6 R's, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So just to kind of give a bit of context around diversity. So it's really just about every individual is unique, and they have and bring different ideas and thoughts um, to either your organization or to how things are done. And it's really based on your lived experiences. So where you were born, where you've grown up, what you've done with your life, what you're passionate about, where you've studied. So all these things make all of us diverse. And it's really the one thing that we all have in common is that we are diverse, every individual person. And then when we talk about inclusion, it's really about people feeling involved and valued, respected, connected. They feel a sense of belonging, which is just so important. And that they can bring their whole selves to the sport, to the environment, to their workplace. So, the person that's there, that shows up, they feel that it's a safe space for them to be able to express their ideas, and that culture and that environment's been created. And so, and then there's a concept of intersectionality. So it's the overlap of these different characteristics that we have. So one of them could be that you are a woman. So if you are a woman and then you are a woman with a disability, or you are an Indigenous woman, or you are a woman of color, these are where you have these intersections that can actually lead to increased disadvantages in your experiences, in your rate of pay, in your opportunities for jobs, etc. So it's just an important concept when we consider gender diversity as well, and equality and equity. And then there's safe sport. So there's an evolution around safe sport where there's it's trying to create these frameworks and trying to create policies and consistency around and places in sport that's free of abuse, harassment, and discrimination. And at the same time, it really being about what it should be about: safe being, sport being safe, and being welcoming. So there's a lot going on in the system right now. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as part of this. And really just about the fact that we are like, if we're trying to be inclusive for women and girls in sport as an example, then we need to be intentional about it. It won't just happen. We have to really have it top of mind and put actions in place, or people that are thinking about this and can really help. So it's right now we're very much there's some movement around gender equity, especially at a federal government level, and in terms of providing opportunities for women to participate in sport, in leadership, in coaching. And this is just a diagram that explains the difference between equality and equity. And ultimately our ultimate goal is equality for everyone, but we're just so far away from that today. So the idea of equity is to give people what they need when they need it, to get them to a place where we're all equal eventually. So I just wanted to just define that a little bit for everyone as well. Just not making assumptions about what people are understanding right now. So just quickly, the demographics of Canada, these are ever changing. So this is not 100% accurate today, but essentially the population is just over 50% women, and these are the different intersections of people. And we're really a multicultural country, and we have pretty great immigration policies that have evolved over the years, and we continue to rely on immigration for all new growth. Our birth rates are very, very low, and for economic growth and to fuel our creativity and innovation, we really need to rely on young immigrants that are professionals, that are coming into Canada and supporting our economy, and just continuing to service and support our economy and our people. And then I just added this Catalyst has a lot of information and statistics around women in the workplace and women on boards, and really has linked greater financial returns and greater business outcomes for when there's representation of women on boards, and that critical mass of over 30%. So I just wanted to add that resource here as well. So let's get into the bigger picture here. So really just some highlights around the numbers today. So what we do know is that women and girls participate in sport at a lower rate than boys and men do. And I know I'm saying from a gender perspective, it's really people that identify as female. And, as you know, in sport, a lot of our programming, our fields, when we ask questions, are male, female. So we're starting to see some changes where we're having another gender or prefer not to disclose. So for the context of our presentation, I acknowledge that, we have, I've categorized as women, but, people that identify as women, and based on our current statistics today. But you'll see that, at the Olympic level, like it's pretty much 50-50. So what we do know about girls that do participate in sport is that they participate in a lot of sports, and they are making their way to the Olympic Games. So there's a lot of opportunity for women in sport. It's just that we're losing a lot of women before they have that opportunity, and they're really dropping out. So it not only is a smaller pool for coaching, it's just also a smaller pool for leadership. So just to highlight some of these dynamics in the system. And we know through some of our surveys of university coaches that they see women moving from athlete to coach in some of those environments, but in university sport, we're still at 17% of head coaches that are female, and about 25% of female assistant coaches. So the numbers are still fairly low, given the number of programs are fairly equal at that university level. And just to point out that 40% or more of coaches that are participating in the Canada Games are female. So we know there are female coaches out there, and Canada Games is one of the only bodies that legislates that you must have a female coach if you have female athletes on your team. So just a few highlights there. And then what are some of the barriers? So these are cited barriers, which means they've been researched, and this is what women have said and their experiences and the environments that they live in. So it's really just about, these are all the variables that play into that. So low salary or lack of salary, lack of stability, lack of role models, stereotypes, and lack of support from family and friends about pursuing coaching as a viable career option. And just a reluctance to hire women into positions if they've never been in positions in maybe more male dominated sports. And so it really creates and perpetuates the fact that we don't see women in these roles. And so young people coming through don't see them, so they don't imagine themselves in those positions. And so that's the little tagline of "you can't be what you can't see," which has been well researched. And so what we know are some of the facilitators for women in coaching are around policies. So if you do have policies in place where you want to have an even number of girls teams, boys teams, and women coaching or men coaching on those teams as well. And then some of the other pieces are around where you talk about like situational or demographic factors. It is really related to where you are and the environment that you're in and your exposure to sports. And I could give you a personal example from when I was in elementary school. We had a female gym teacher, and it was a segregated program where we had, and I grew up in Labrador City, so it was we were really fortunate to have two gym teachers. So we had a male and a female. So the programs are segregated, and our teacher was just so she had such a love and passion for sport, and she stayed over lunch every day of the week So girls could participate in a variety of sports and dance and gymnastics and all. We had exposure to so many things because of her. And she really developed a generation of physically literate athletes and just, people in general, and really built those confidence in movement skills and just trying out all kinds of different things. So that environment that you grew up in can give you that confidence to try anything when you're older as well. And really just, having the support of your family and your friends, especially if you do want to get into coaching. And as we know, it can involve a lot of travel and being away, and you really need that support if you want to get into it and stay in it. And really just creating those networks where people don't feel isolated. And especially if you're the lone coach on provincial team and national team program, and you're traveling, and then you only see no one like yourself. No one like yourself is there. So you don't have that network or of women coaches or other coaches that you can, speak to and talk to when you're at these types of events. And so isolation is definitely one of the top barriers for women in coaching, especially at a higher level. So these are all the types of things that really explain why we have women in coaching. And when you talk to women that are coaches, they really don't necessarily want to see policies in place. Like they don't want to be that token female that was in a program and that's why they're there. They want to be there because they've earned the position to be there. And this is around that bigger piece around society and gender norms and social norms about who can coach. And so if you do talk to women coaches, that would be really what they'd want, is that the environment has been created and that culture's there to support them and that they can thrive, just like anyone else that wants to coach. So just a couple of things around that. And so it brings me to this model that is Nicole Lavoie's work, and it's really the four main pieces that can support and create barriers for women coaches. And so it happens all the way through the system, where you have it's happening at an individual level about your own beliefs about whether you should be coaching or not. Just value systems and culture are within workplaces, within sport environments. So these are really the different levels. And as you can see, like on a societal level, around bias and underrepresentation, racism. So these are all contributing factors, and then even around hiring practices as well. So there's a lot of pieces that factor into whether women are going to either get into coaching or stay in coaching. And so just a couple of news items recently. So this just came up in September, where this woman is now she is the all-time big wave surfer. So not only has she surpassed the previous 70-ish foot wave, she's also now surpassed the male that had the record. So she is actually not only the women's leader in this, but the general overall leader. And so this article I came across is a really, really interesting, that was in the Atlantic. And it really gives you a history of the sport and why you haven't heard about her, and also just some other examples of other sports where men and women competed together, and how when a woman won, they changed the rules. So it's just about where we are in society. And so that's really what I want to highlight in terms of the bigger picture. So I think a lot of progress has been made, and we're seeing a lot of that with the WNBA, and a lot more women sports broadcasters, and with TSN and others. So there's a lot of good progress, but it's just that when we talk about barriers, it's just to highlight that at a higher level, this does still exist. So we still have work to do, but we can definitely celebrate the progress we've made. And so this came up on my Twitter, and it was on Instagram actually. So it just speaks to the fact that there are women participating. It's just that And this woman went out of her way to actually go to the sports section of the New York Times. And her point was just that she cut out, she was trying to show like how the women's coverage, and there was zero women's coverage in the paper this day. So, and she went on to talk about how there's like all these world records being broken in track and field. So it's just just another piece that kind of just supports in terms of research and what's happening around in society and sport. So, the point here is just to think about, what you or your organization is doing or can do to diversify, be more inclusive of women, or the intersection of women with other dimensions of diversity, and really just about, changing the system and disrupting the system that we have today. And so I just wanted to share a few things around some different areas to think about. And so it really categorized under these 6 pillars for developing and supporting women in coaching. So I'll go through these fairly quickly here. I'm keeping track of time. So just ideas around recruitment. So, as we know from the stats that, girls are dropping out of sport at a younger age than boys, and therefore you don't have as large a pool. So if they're thinking of dropping out, they no longer want to participate in sport for various reasons, including school and other priorities. A good way to maybe retain them, recruit them into coaching before you lose them, or as a way to keep them involved in sport and managing those schedules, just having those plans for them, providing some opportunities financially, or get them on their pathway to coaching by introducing them to it in some fairly accessible and sometimes free resources through, whether it's some of our e-learning modules. There's a lot of different products out there, and programs and services, and giving opportunities for leadership development when you have them in your program. So whether it's demonstrating skills or involved in other community events, mentorship is huge. Hosting an event for the girls or women in your program, bring them together to talk about other opportunities. So there's some small things you can do that could really have a high impact. And just looking at your participants and people that you think would be interested in coaching, or you think would make good coaches, have really good leadership skills. And the number one thing is really just to ask them, to actually go up to them and ask them, because if you ask them, they will, they'll feel that confidence that you have in them, and it will encourage them and motivate them to give it a try. So those are some of the areas around recruitment. And then around retention is really just, again, mentorship is a real proven strategy. Sponsoring them, so kind of moving them up the ladder, and giving those additional opportunities. Other programs that are outside of your sport that are available. So I highlighted the Canada Games, but there's probably provincial games, other opportunities when you host like major events in your provinces, that there's maybe an apprenticeship program there. Provide some funding opportunities for professional development, just co-coaching if women are starting a family and having trouble managing their schedules, and prioritizing that there's some co-coaching or just modified schedules that support other things that they're doing in their lives that maybe conflict with the standard schedules, like things that are happening around dinner time or whatnot. And communities of practice are really just ways to bring people together and talk about things they're passionate about or grow and develop. So just creating an online forum or an in-person or whatnot, and really just making those coaches feel valued, feel supported, welcome, and that you care about them. And just this culture of caring and growth that you can create within your programs and your organizations to really make them feel valued and special, and part of just progress within your organization or club. And then research, just really just like finding out who's in your program and why, and who's not there and why, and what are some of the barriers. And I just added in this little chart here about how, and this is true for the NCAA as well. So in the US system, where in the 60s and before, there were a lot more female coaches for female programs and female teams at the varsity level. And with Title IX and the introduction of equality around women's sports, it's really, really increased the number of females participating, but it's also increased the number of males coaching those female teams. So the NCAA has 40% female coaches, which seems really good, but they were at 90% before Title IX in the 60s. So it's just the trends that are happening, and so why it's happening and what you can do. And then recognition. So just celebrating your coaches, profiling them, giving equal exposure to different genders within your organization in terms of those profiles, creating awards, nominating coaches for awards outside of your own programs, and just promoting them through your local channels as well. And National Coaches Week is a great example, and it just brings to light the importance of coaches in our system. So it's a wonderful, wonderful event for not only us, but for across Canada, for all organizations and people and coaches. And we're starting to see even really young kids thanking their coaches. So it's really, really nice, and a really nice recognition of the time that you put in, your commitment as well. And then just representation. So just thinking about like who's on your board. So what is the composition of that? If you have more women on your board, they'll be thinking about the experience of women as well, or how to engage more women in the organization. Same is true for if you have some Indigenous representation or Black coaches or volunteers and whatnot. And just taking a look at your own websites and what images are already on your website. So if you're looking at it, who can see themselves in your sport and your organization, and through pamphlets or social that you're doing. And also try to engage women and girls in your programming design to try to increase those numbers. So I wanted to leave some resources for you here. And so there's a Keeping Girls in Sport online module that you can access through Jumpstart or Canadian Women's Sports site, which can help any coach, and just some of the subtleties sometimes of working with girls, and how, you can help enhance those experiences through this module. We have a journal for women in coaching, so really try to highlight great work that organizations are doing, other research that's going on, that other programs and initiatives that our sports are doing or university sport is doing. So there's a lot there. There's tons. I have a few others as well. And then the Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women's Sport is Nicole Lavoie is one of the leads on that, and there's tons of information there. So I'll leave you with some of those resources you can access as well. And then we've developed a female coach mentorship guide. So we have a mentor guide, a mentee guide, and a sport admin guide. And the model itself is actually, the mentorship model is applicable to anybody, so anybody can use it. And at the front, we have some resources and some specific areas around female coaches specifically. So it just helps to support anyone that wants to do mentorship. And it's really a step-by-step process that you can implement quite easily within your own programming, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I will now stop so I can turn it over to questions. So Kirsty, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Isabel. Great timing.
I was really trying to stay on track.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and all those resources are great. And I know someone just mentioned the chat box that Keeping Girls in Sport is really good training. Totally would echo that. It's awesome. And there's a lot of good resources found on there. And also the mentorship booklets, I guess you can call them. We use them for our mentorship program, so definitely recommend taking a look at those. A few questions have already come in. So the first one is, what is the age that girls are dropping out of sports for the statistics that you provided? Thanks.
Yeah, so the one that I provided was it was in adolescence. So it was in the, some of the statistics said between 10 and 13, and others were specifically around the 16 to 18 range. But the one statistic was definitely under the age of 14. Yeah, and the full report, if you want it, is called the Rally Report, and it was published by Canadian Women in Sport. So I just extracted a couple of stats from there, but they just launched it in June, and they did one in 2016. So they've got some comparative data now. And so June of 2020, Canadian Women in Sport, the Rally Report.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, quite a few questions. So hopefully we can get through all of them. The first one is, as a male coach, how can you make a female more comfortable as a co-coach or assistant coach?
Yeah, that's great. And I actually meant to put that in under the representation, because male coaches and male champions are so integral to the development of women as coaches and recruiting women into coaching. So I like I mentioned, asking them to coach is a really great first step, and just having ongoing dialogue, and just, you know, what are their needs, or just really engaging them, and creating this feeling of um, you know, equal representation, or everyone's voice is heard, and just asking them what they need. So it's not, there's not anything that's like overly complicated. It's just you know, just by asking, I think is just such a huge step in demonstrating to them that you have confidence in them, that you know that they have the capability. And I think the other thing is really about creating that culture of risk, and taking risks, and making mistakes is okay. And, you know, I mean, that's applicable to anyone, but it, you know, just when you're developing that, you know, people to develop those skills really need an opportunity to try things out, see what works, see what didn't, and just continue to learn and grow and improve. And that's that culture you create in those opportunities.
Awesome, thank you. Um, okay, you have highlighted that there has been progress recently. Is it starting to show up in numbers such as percentage of female coaches at the university level in Canada or in other organizations?
Great question. So there's been, the University of Toronto's done some gender equity reports. So it started back, I believe, back in 2011. So they've done the reports 2011, 2013, 2015, I believe. So I have not seen those numbers increase on a grand scale. Um, in fact, it looks like they might have decreased. But it just speaks to the fact that it just takes quite a bit of time for the change in the numbers to start to show for the work that's happening. And I'll give you an example. So we started a university mentorship program back in 2015. So we piloted it with 3 universities in Ontario, and in Queen's was one of the universities. And we started with one coach at Queen's, developed like how to mentor. We're supported through the program, and they published you know, just the program and what they did. And then it went from, like, that first year we had 3 total coaches, and it went from 3 to 9. So each of those universities added 3 new assistant coaches and or mentees into the program. So we did see, you know, some numbers increase within some of the universities as a result of the programming that was very intentional. But just the bigger picture numbers yet haven't really translated. But I'm really confident that it will start to happen. It's just going to take a little more time. We just can't take our foot off the gas. We just have to keep going, and continue to, you know, provide the programming and support.
Great, thank you. And there's quite a few questions, so everyone, I'll ask one more, but if your question didn't get answered, I'll be following up at the end of the week with some of the resources, and then maybe you can connect with Isabel about anything more, because a couple of them are asking for specific resources, so you may be able to point them in the right direction.
Okay.
The last one is, where would I find some tips in dealing with an old boys club?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a really hard one. One of the one of the best documents is, there's 2 things actually. There's 2 that I think will help. One is called Fighting Bias, and it's actually a program that was created by Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO at Facebook, and it's called Lean In. And then there's it. So Lean In is like, she's written a book called Lean In, and then she's created some resources, and one of them is Fighting Bias. So it's 50 ways to fight bias, and gender bias specifically. And within it, what it does is it gives you some tools to be able to respond to whether it's comments that take place. So within the old boys network, or within a male dominant environment where you have these what we call like the microaggressions or the comments, or just not being able to respond when people say things that you don't know how to respond. So it gives ways to respond to comments as an example. And then the other one is actually part of the Tucker Center, the research. There's some specific tools within that around just that the societal pieces, the organizational pieces around combating that. So happy to give, I think there's some specific links in there that will take you to it. But if you need more, Kirsty, I'm happy to follow up with those links too.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And I can put them in the email on Friday. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up here. So thanks so much, Isabel, and thank you to everyone for attending tonight's first session. And hopefully we'll see you at the next one. So thanks, Isabel.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. All the best.
All right, so next up we have Casey. So Casey is the Manager of Sport Community Engagement at the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport. In this role, she manages the outreach and engagement of True Sport, an initiative designed to give people, communities, and organizations the means by which to leverage the many benefits of good sport from a platform of shared values and principles. These principles define Canada's commitment to values-based and principle-driven sport and are activated and supported by Canadian communities, sport organizations, schools, groups, and individuals as a means to deliver positive sport experiences. When sport is good, it has the power to instill character in youth, strengthen and connect communities, and increase opportunities for excellence. Previously, Casey worked as a secondary school physical and health educator, particularly passionate about inspiring a commitment to physical activity and wellness. Casey holds Bachelor's of Education, Science, and Physical and Health Education from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. So lately, the Nova Scotia Safe Sport Work Group has been doing lots of work with Casey, and we've had her on a couple of our VIP calls, as this really falls in line with what we're trying to promote in Nova Scotia around safe sport and ethics in sport. So we're really excited to learn more from Casey about the True Sport coach. So Casey, I'll stop sharing my screen, and then you should be able to take it away from here.
That's great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Let's make sure this is working. Are we good to go, Kirsty?
Yep, looks great. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come back. As Kirsty said, been doing some work with Sport Nova Scotia, particularly around their safe sport initiatives, and it has just been a crazy 7 months during COVID lockdown. But for us, what that's meant at True Sport is we've actually had the opportunity to reach out and work with some groups who would otherwise maybe have a little bit too much on their plate to think of preventative measures and how they might integrate some of these preventative approaches to some unethical decisions in sport. So we've been super fortunate to have that opportunity. And again, thank you so much, Kirsty, for having me here today. I want to start off by talking a little bit about why athletes, coaches, parents, and other sports stakeholders engage in unethical and unhealthy behavior. As Kirsty said, me and my team at True Sport, we live and are housed in the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports. So largely, we spend a lot of our time talking about these unethical behaviors. So I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the shop at our organization here in Ottawa is responsible for administering the Canadian Anti-Doping Program. So you would know them well as those who do sample collection for our high performance athletes across the country. But then there's a smaller subsection of us who are looking at the wealth of other ethical issues that face Canadian sport. And I guess if you take even one step back beyond that, me and my team of about 5 of us on the True Sport team are looking at the positive values that exist in sport and how sport can be used as a vehicle for good, but only when and if it is done right. So if we take that into heart and we talk about, why do we see so much unethical and unhealthy behavior in sport? If we can look beyond blaming individuals and start looking at the environments in which the individual grows up in and the key influences in their lives, who are affecting their decisions, we might start to get a closer look into why these things are happening in Canada and all around the world. Pretty quickly, we also might realize the positive and very powerful benefits of a good sport experience. They're very ones that I, and likely you, experienced growing up. We like to think that recognizing that those who exhibited negative sport behaviors, maybe they grew up in a sport system that had convinced them that this kind of behavior was necessary. From a very young age, they were likely taught that winning was the only thing that mattered, and how you won wasn't important. So decisions to engage in unethical conduct in sport actually has roots in our early childhood experiences. And if we're going to prevent those unethical practices from happening, then we need to ensure that our sports system instills the positive values of sport in young children from the time they enter sport right up to whatever path in sport they follow, including high performance. And really that is the crux in the center of how the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport came to be. It seems as though the values in sport might be the key to protecting our health and well-being in this particular environment. So with that in mind, we might begin to appreciate the important public asset that sport is in Canada. In fact, there's actually little else in our communities that can produce the multitude of positive benefits that a good sport experience can. And that brings me to the numbers on our slide here now. Research shows that 7 out of 10 kids drop out of structured sport by the age of 13, and enrollment in sport is declining. So why is that, and what does it have to do with values-based sport? Hoping tonight we can spend a little bit of time talking about it. So what's the problem? In other words, what's causing the problem of fewer kids participating in sport, and what does values-based sport have to do with it? I think if we could really nail it down and drill down, the problem is that the integrity of sport is under attack on all fronts. We like to show this slide when we talk a little bit about true sport and how it's under attack, because unfortunately, this slide is all too easy for us to come up with. At any given moment, when you look across the headlines as it relates to sport, these are the types of things that we see all too often, whether it be hazing, whether it be poor parental behavior, whether it be anti-doping at a high performance level or max fixing. You might say that these are the pieces that we think of, that some parents think of when they think about sport, and maybe these are the reasons why they're more hesitant to get involved, to have their children get involved and allow them to be involved in sport. Parents are thinking twice about that, and young volunteers in sport are not replacing our older volunteers in sport. We have no shared agreement in the Canadian sports system around a common infrastructure and framework or foundation for sport. And as a consequence, we have a patchwork and misaligned sports system in Canada. And Canadians are losing trust in the system that we do have. Then we talk about when sport stays bad. So over time, these bad behaviors or threats to sport can grow and spread across the entire sport system, impacting all levels of sport and society. And we talk about that becoming when they become systemic problems. We can think about the Russian doping scandal as one of those as an example. These threats could be, like I mentioned previously, doping, violence, harassment and abuse, poor parental behavior, weak sport governance, negative pro sport values, lack of access and inclusion, just to name a few. These threats to sport can eventually emerge into serious ethical issues, and they have a tremendous impact on the legacy of sport. So there it is. But before I dive into our proposed solution, or one of the ways that we've been combating this attack on sport, this is sort of the why. This is the why we do. This is why we need your help as coaches to intentionally drive a sport system that is based on positive values. I think another nod to our why is that over the last 15 years, we have been conducting public opinion research at the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport. And one of the pieces that we ask time and time again is we ask Canadians, do they believe in sport as a positive influence? Do they believe in sport as a positive force for good? And time again, Canadians, overwhelming amount of Canadians, believe that sport can be that positive influence in the lives of our children and youth. The unfortunate component to that is that less than 20% of them believe that sport currently, and the system that we currently have, is living up to the full potential that they believe that sport can do. So that is where the True Sport values were born. So when we go back to that, the idea was we have this gap, we have this misalignment in Canadian sport. How do we close it? Where do we go from here? And how do we get to a place where more and more Canadians feel confident with the sport system that we have? So leading back to that, we asked Canadians, if sport were to be that powerful force for good that we know that it can be, what would be the values at the center of those sport experience? And what we came up with and what Canadians told us were the values of fairness, excellence, inclusion, and fun. So this is one way to achieve the good sport we all want. But again, we all need to play a role in intentionally ensuring these values exist in our sport experience from the playground to the podium. And one thing that we've learned in our 15 years of being at this thing called True Sport from the CCS is that values are a difficult conversation to have with people. Values differ not only from community to community or sport organization to sport organization, but they differ across people. Specifically, our personal values are different from one person to the next. So what we did is we took those values and we said, is there a series of action statements that we could have people rally around and bring people together around that said, you know, if these 7 action statements were in play on and off the field of play, then we could be maybe inching towards a better sport experience, a more positive sport experience for those involved. And that's where the True Sport principles were born. And these 7 action statements, I think maybe the best part about them is that they resonate so deeply with athletes at all levels. So we have had high performance athletes say that these are the things that are most important about the sport experience, right down to the grade 2s when we're working with them and asking them, you know, what does keep it fun mean to you? How do you bring play fair to life when you're playing with your friends in the playground? The thing is that these 7 principles are universal. If we dive in a little bit more and we talk about those principles living in this sphere that we call good sport, and we think of that white circle as being the good sport experience, and we can think about, if this was a video, those principles and those bubbles sort of ebbing and flowing. So we're not naive to think that all 7 of these principles will be in perfect balance and proportion all the time. That is not how sport works. Maybe on one day we're really focusing on respect others, and in the next moment there's a bigger emphasis on stay healthy, and that's the way sport is supposed to work, ebbing and flowing in that way. The problem arises when one or more of the principles is emphasized so much that it pushes one or more of the other principles outside of the good sport circle. So if you think about it, most often that principle that is overemphasized is the go for it principle, or the winning or the excellence principle. And make no mistake about it, True Sport is absolutely 100% about winning. Winning is a component of sport, it is one of the biggest components of sport. But like we can show here in this picture, is the problem becomes when winning is the only component in sport, is the most important component, and none of the other pieces matter. So in this particular example, you can think about winning pushing out the stay healthy principle outside of the circle, and that might look like, as an example, cutting corners in your health, maybe taking risks when it comes to doping or poor nutrition. I think of back to myself as a high performance Taekwondo athlete, and I can say that I remember wearing a garbage bag, running in a sauna, trying to drop weight a few hours before the weigh-in just to meet a lower weight class division when I competed in that sport. And when I think back to that, I most certainly was not thinking about staying healthy in that moment. So when we talk about True Sport and we talk about the impact it can have on good sport and how it can lead to increased positive experiences that we know drive retention and increased participation, that's then at that point when we start to realize the wealth of positive benefits that a good sport experience can have. And for those of you that might be familiar with a very dated, but I would reckon is still a relevant report, the True Sport report, it identified the fact that beyond the obvious health and wellness benefits of sport, that there is a wealth of societal benefits to be had when sport is good in a community. And if we tag those benefits down to say, what exactly do they look like? We talk about how good sport can be a vehicle to instill character in our children, can be a vehicle to strengthen and connect communities, bringing together people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And it can also lead to increased opportunities for personal excellence. And that is that peace and that tension that exists when we talk about all of these principles living, ebbing and flowing, how we compete, and the integrity that we want to have in the sporting system, and how does that exist when excellence in winning is still a goal. So I'm going to change gears a little bit here in the interest of time and not going over, but what I wanted to provide is that overview of True Sport for those of you who may not be familiar with it. But then I also wanted to save at least a little bit of time to dive into some of those resources that we have. So that was the philosophy of True Sport. And now I want to point to some of the very pointed tools and resources we've developed over the years, specifically the tools and resources that might resonate for you as a coach. So to start with, of course, we have our True Sport principles, and what we've done over the years is actually we've welcomed the opportunity to have those principles translated into a multitude of different languages. We realize that the fabric of our country is multicultural, and within those different cultures exists a multitude of different languages, and we've been so impressed by the outpouring of support that we've received from people all across the community saying these principles resonate with me too, and I want them to be available in my language of choice. So this is just a snippet of the languages that we have available, because we now have the True Sport principles translated in 14 different languages available for download on the True Sport website. We also, this year and during the times of COVID, we were finally able to produce a series of infographics that we've been working on for a long time. So the different piece and the different pathway, I think, of True Sport versus another program you might be involved in is that True Sport, in fact, is not a program. It's a philosophy. It's a way of coaching. It's a way of being a sport participant. It's a way of supporting sport. It's a series of principles that we hope we can rally people around. And what that means is that there's no set checklist from 1 to 10 of ways to approach this and ways to live True Sport or bring it to life. But what we've tried to do here is we've tried to create an easy to use and easy to navigate infographic for all of the different stakeholders that might exist. So if you visit the True Sport website, you can decide to join and show your commitment to this type of sport. And whether you see yourself as being your role being identified as a sport organization or a coach or a participant or a parent, we've got an infographic for you. So you can navigate, and all of those red highlighted words are links that will send you to a different resource, tip, tool, idea, or something that can support your quest and your journey to bring True Sport to life in your way. We also have a series of different examples and tools that different sport organizations and what they've done and how they've integrated. And I'm actually super proud to announce that just today, we launched our very first values-based coaching module alongside Gymnastics Canada. So if you're interested, the Sport Information Resource Center will actually be posting a blog on Gymnastics Canada True Sport journey and the commitment that they've made to bringing this type of sport to life, and how they're using True Sport to vocalize their commitment to values-based sport. And this values-based coaching module was just their first step. So it's available for you to see and follow along on their website, and I'm happy to send along the link afterwards. But there's been commitment from sport organizations from top to bottom and everywhere in between. So Ring at Canada has been a leader in the promotion of True Sport since my 11 years that I've been here promoting it. So it's great to see them implementing it at all levels of the sport systems. These are just a few of the examples. Talk about during this downtime, we had an opportunity to work with Ringette Canada, Wheelchair Basketball Canada, Archery Canada, and taking that infographic approach and taking the principles and talking about how specifically their sports can bring those principles to life on and off the field of play. Of course, in the times of pandemic and COVID, with sport for the most part being shuttered, we thought, how can we still keep these principles top of mind, and how can we be practicing them? And a number of sport organizations raised their hand and said, how can I too bring this to life? We also have a couple of selection guides that have been instrumental in helping sport organizations and coaches really live the true sport principles. So one being a coach selection process guide for a sport organization. So how do you start with bringing coaches on side in your organization that believe in the same thing that you do? So not just what they know, but how do they coach and what do they believe in, and are they on the same page as you off the jump? And then secondly, a player selection process for team sports. So what does that look like, and how can we be as transparent as possible in those processes? These are two guides that are meant to be customizable for your sport experience. And if I didn't mention it again, if I didn't mention it off the beginning of these resources, all of these resources are free to download, and they're all meant to be customized and tweaked in a way that fit you and your sport organization. Another one of the resources that has been key for the True Sport coach is the True Sport Agreement. And this is nothing new. This is not earth-shattering. This is something that educators and coaches, I think, to a certain degree, have been doing for a very long time. And it's how do we bring our athletes and our parents together around one shared goal and one shared set of values that will put us on the right track. So not only talking about where do we want to go and what are the goals that we want to achieve, but identifying how exactly are we going to have to work together in order to get there, and making the link between those two pieces. So this is a resource and an activity that outlines how coaches can bring their athletes together and get them to co-create sort of a code of conduct together, and then also having the same conversation with parents. So it just provides that foundation from the very beginning of a season to say, we're all in this together, and how do we want to achieve this, and how do we want to treat each other over the course of the season to make sure that we're achieving our shared goals that we've outlined. And it's done from a very positive lens. You know, often when I first started at the CCS, I received the same question time and time again, which was, can you send me your best code of conduct? As the Center for Ethics in Sport, you must have an airtight code of conduct. And in fact, what the research has shown is that the best way to do that is to co-create it and have people weigh in and talk about how exactly do they see success across the season happening. We've also worked side by side with Sport for Life alongside their long-term athlete development matrix. This is actually being redeveloped as we speak. We're in a process of redeveloping this, but what we did was we took that framework that of course has changed over time, and we said, how can we pair ethical literacy alongside all of those components of physical literacy that we know too well? So if you visit the True Sport website and you select you know, the age that you're working with, the age and stage of athletes that you're working with, we provide a series of tips and ideas of how you can bring the True Sport principles to life alongside each of those. There's simple things like a True Sport Award. So, you know, just I saw the tail end of the last presenter speaking about recognition and how it does wonders to move these types of initiatives forward. And this is a super easy way to identify, thank you for your commitment in helping us bring True Sport to life. Thank you for being a real team player and bringing to life the values and principles we'd like to see. And these types of award can be presented not only to athletes, but also to parents or volunteers or officials. Anyone in the sport experience is doing their part to make it a more enjoyable experience for all those involved. And lastly, I'll wrap on a couple of resources that are maybe not directly for coaches, but definitely resources that coaches might find helpful to share with their parents. So we developed what we called the True Sport Activity Calendar, which each page of the calendar provides a snippet of a tool or resource for parents to take a look at to learn a bit more. But then in the calendar itself, we provided little stickers so that people can track their participation in a variety of different physical literacy exercises, but we also provided little stickers to track their ethical literacy behavior. So when were those moments in time that your child showed you was really committed to respect, or was really committed to playing fair, or was really just an all-around true sport athlete? Let's recognize those moments, and let's use this as a way to bring those conversations to life between parents and their children. Some of you may be familiar with our Ride Home campaign that we launched in 2015. So it was a really moving and powerful video that we produced to help profile a campaign that was targeted at parents. And it was by no means set out to talk about how bad or how negative parents are and the influence that they have with children. It was to say that parents by and large are well-meaning individuals, and like that graphic that I showed a few slides back, they just get caught up in winning. And so how can we make a really poignant and powerful video that says, you know, if this was you, let's take a little step back and say what's really important. Why did we put our children in sport to begin with? And alongside that, we said, you know, here's a quick tip sheet for parents. So if these are some of the things that you're doing, maybe consider stopping doing those things. And if these are the things you're doing, keep doing it. You know, the stoplight model was to line up nicely with the ride home theme. And then lastly, you know, here's a few things that you might consider doing if you're not doing them already. But this was supposed to be a little wallet card that they can carry it around. We also have a mobile version that they can access on their phone. So just simple tools that we can say, you know, we know you're trying to do your best, but let's just remember that when we're on the sidelines cheering our children on. And I think I'll stop there, Kirsty, because I want to provide an opportunity to answer any questions anyone might have. And I know that that was a pretty quick overview, but thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to be here and celebrate the amazing contribution that all these coaches have to Canadian sport.
Great, thank you so much, Casey. And there's already someone saying like how awesome these resources are, and I totally agree. And I threw the website into the chat box too, so they can access that. So a couple questions have come through. So one being, I've seen some teams with the True Sport logo on their uniforms. What are the steps if we want to do this? Our club promotes True Sport.
That's a wonderful question, and thank you so much for asking it. So I would encourage all of you here today, if these values and principles speak to you and they align with your coaching philosophy, that you yourself as a citizen can go to the True Sport website and add your name to the growing list of people who believe in this kind of sport. That would be the first step. And if you're looking to share it beyond that and bring it back to your sport organization, I would say take this information that I've shared with you today and have a conversation with them. You know, we're not in a position of wanting empty declarations to just get as many Canadians as we can to sign on and say, yeah, I believe in True Sport. We want them to be meaningful declarations, meaningful people who say, you know, this is really important to me and I want to intentionally embed this kind of sport in my sphere of influence. So that would be the first step, is joining. And then the next step would be to navigate some of these resources that I've shared with you here today. So again, I think a first good step and entry point is to take a look at those infographics that we've developed, but then ultimately we are only a phone call away. And like I said, this is not a 1 to 10 step program. And if you have any questions that you want to talk about how we might make a specific engagement plan for you, I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Great, thanks, Casey. And the other question was more about swag and whatnot, so where they can get t-shirts. So I already answered that, but if you go to the website, there's lots of like promo material and like backpacks and hats and things like that that you can purchase if you want to show off your swag.
If I could just add to that too, Kirsty, is that the swag is not even a money-making venture for us at the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport. We built the swag and we developed the swag items as a result of so many people being interested in it. But what I do often want to say is that if you are a True Sport member and you want to show your commitment to True Sport by displaying the red circle and the brand and the logo, add it to the things that you're already having built. That's really the easiest way to do it. There's a lot of times, you know, we're having t-shirts printed, throw the True Sport logo on it. So of course, absolutely, you can order from our website, but if it's easier for you to just add it to something you're already doing from a custom perspective, that's great too. And what we love the most about that is when things are co-branded or you're wearing something that also has your logo on it, because it's your commitment to True Sport, and that's what speaks volumes to us and everybody else.
Awesome, thank you. And someone just asked if True Sport has been involved with football before.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great question. So we have over 4,500 True Sport member groups as of today who are involved in True Sport. And like I said, we've been doing this thing called True Sport for about 15 years now. So really that number of 4,500 True Sport member groups is representative of about 16 million Canadians. So it's a rough indication of how many people and what the awareness might be. And of course, we can't say that all 4,500 member groups, that every single stakeholder and every single single organization lives it and understands it. But you yourself, if you're interested in your community to find out the sport organizations that are involved, if you go to our member tab on our website, you can search, you can filter by geographic area, you can search by sport, you can search by member type. So all of that information is available to you. And if you're having trouble navigating that, again, just send us a note.
Great, thank you. And I think that's it for questions, but if anyone does have any questions, please write in the chat box, but I will follow up at the end of the week with some resources that were mentioned here. But thank you so much, Casey. This information is always so valuable, and we really appreciate these resources, so thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. Good luck to everybody in your quests and being celebrated this week during Coaches Week. Thanks again, Chrissy.
Thank you. All right, so next up we have Paul Tingley. So Paul is a 5-time Paralympian who captured gold at the 2008 Beijing Games in parasailing and is the parasport coordinator at Sport Nova Scotia. Paul will speak to the group about parasport sports in the region, the para pathway, how to recruit participants and create a welcoming space, how to identify the barriers to participation and how to address them, how to identify what sports are good for which abilities, and much more. So as everyone knows, the theme of this conference is safe sport, but specifically diversity and inclusion. So we're really excited to hear more about parasport and how we can be more inclusive of parasport athletes. So Paul, I will stop sharing now, and then you can take it away from here.
Okay. Thank you, Kirsty. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Oh, great. Well, thank you everyone for sticking around to see my presentation. Let me just get it all set up here. And thanks to Casey and Isabel, I learned a lot there, and there's a lot for me to follow up on. So I'm going to be talking about coaching athletes with a disability. And my name is Paul Tingley. I work as the parasport coordinator at Sport Nova Scotia. I've been there for about 3 years. And I myself have a disability, so I can talk about my personal experiences, but also supporting the other parasport programs across the province and what I've learned, and working with coaches to deliver these programs has been a huge part of every program's success. So tonight what I'll do is kind of go over some kind of broad definitions. Then we'll talk about the journey of a new parasport coach. And then I'm going to kind of dive into each of the parasports and just kind of go over very broadly about what that sport brings to persons with that type of disability, maybe the challenges and equipment, the facility, just kind of the highlights of training to be a parasport coach in that sport. So the first question is, what is parasport? So it seems pretty obvious to me, and maybe a lot of people on the call, but it actually becomes, a lot of people are thinking that parasport means Paralympics or paraplegic, but really para is parallel. So it parallels the Olympics, it parallels normal sports, and we have adapted sports for people with physical disability. For the most part, the parasports that I deal with are for physical and not cognitive. That's more of the Special Olympics, but a lot of people have multiple disabilities. So there's a lot of crossover, and we see populations in both programs. Visible or invisible disabilities, we have both in our programs, and it includes so many impairments. We don't turn anyone away. So it might not work, your disability in one sport, but we try to find an opportunity for you to participate and play. So in the bottom, I've also used the space to advertise certain programs that are happening, and that's the paracycling tri-ride at the Canada Game Centre happening on Sundays. So these three definitions are, some people use the words interchangeably, and they are different. So I just want to highlight that, and without reading it all, like inclusion is an act to kind of deliberately include everybody, and accessibility is how well you can, like the design of products, the environment, how well it is open to be adapted. And diversity is the result. It is the reflection of the diverse people in that group. So what are the benefits of parasport? And they are the same as for everybody, all groups. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to get more active for life, and become stronger. And as the youth do it, they develop resiliency and find a place of belonging. So that's, it's the same benefits for everybody, but I think it's definitely underscored for people with disabilities if they're having problems kind of fitting in school and things like that. So there's one little definition: when people pursue their recreation interests, preferences, talents, and passions, they feel alive, vibrant, strong, and complex as a human being. So basically you want to give the opportunity for everybody to live out their dreams. And that's one of the things that we want to do here at Parasport. And I should say that the way it works here at Sport Nova Scotia is that the provincial sport organizations deliver the adapted sport for their sport. And I am a consultant that works with those PSOs to deliver the quality parasport programs. And what happens a lot of time is there can be a lot of people are struggling to know how to deliver a quality program, and I can kind of come in and make the best use of the resources, kind of help them with recruitment. I know the stakeholders, so I kind of give them a head start, and I work hand in hand with PSOs that are looking to deliver those programs. So some of the barriers for people to participate in the parasport programs is one is just knowing about the available programs, and we don't have programs until we have coaches. So coaches are also leaders, and a lot of times they're coaching the program and they're also kind of promoting the program as well. I think parent education, a lot of parents don't know that their kids can fall out of the chair or get bumped and still continue on and be stronger for it. That's the developing the resiliency. And the parents definitely has to be a partner that we work with to get their buy-in. So that is a focus through the IWK and working with groups like that, where we send out all the opportunities on the parasport programs. There's money for, a lot of times the equipment is very specialized, and also there's facility costs, and transportation for a lot of people is an issue. And then last but not least is the stigma of kind of saying that you're disabled and that you're going to participate in a parasport program. So that's a big one. And it seems to be breaking down a little bit more, but there's still a lot of room for improvement for people to get out and participate. As coaches, they were asked, what are like your concerns about becoming a parasport program? And these are maybe the top three, so that coaches might not be confident with their own skills, that they can kind of extrapolate and be creative to becoming an adaptive sport. There's questions about safety. They don't know the disability of the participant, and maybe they're not very confident to put them in those situations. So for them, it's a learning experience. And also, they don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to communicate improperly. So there's a lot of stress because there's a lot of terms for everything, and then those terms change as well. So people kind of always think that they're behind what is current. So that's just kind of the evolution of where we are today. And it's not too bad, because a lot of these things can be overcome with a certain mindset. of just being patient and trying. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I just want to talk about the Sport for Life, the 3.0. So they kind of redid the whole LTAD pathway here, and they've made the box. And on the right-hand side in the circle, you'll see first involvement in awareness. And what that was done for was for the para sports, because a lot of people just don't know about the parasport. And what happens is that if you are hurt as a result of an accident or a disease, you don't know about parasport. I know personally when I was 24 and I had a ski accident, I knew I wanted to play parasports, but I didn't know anything about it. So just becoming aware about the programs is a big part of the step. And then also your first involvement. So that first involvement, and we'll talk about it, is creating that welcoming, inclusive environment where no matter your ability or your background, you're going to feel welcome and you want to come back. So we spent a lot of time on that, because if you don't do the first involvement right, we know we're going to lose them for a long time, and they might tell a lot of their friends too. So I'm really happy that from the top down, Sport for Life has really taken this inclusion is non-negotiable stance, and it's in all their literature. And I won't read it all, but in the underline, it says inclusion is a topic because our system currently excludes. And I think it's refreshing to see that they are disclaiming not all the pros, but the cons and what we need to work on. And they're hearing it from the communities that are being excluded. So it's great that the top-down leadership might affect change and get more buy-in and more resources. So we're going to talk about the journey. Maybe some of you are sitting there and thinking about becoming involved in a parasport program. So I kind of did a couple loose steps. There's a lot of things not in here, but these are the broad strokes. So the first step is to educate yourself. And NCCP and Jumpstart both have great online courses to help you get started. Those are take about an hour, and the other one is about 2 hours. There's a lot of multiple choice, there's a lot of videos, and it's really engaging, and you can't know how much you don't know until you take something like that. And it questions your bias, and it really makes you think about, are you really being inclusive? So I strongly urge you, and it's free this week, the Coaching Athletes with a Disability. So that would be a good first step. So then you're going to partake and continue on to be a parasport. And this is where your positive first impression happens. And the first positive first impression is your advertising of the program. So what you want to do is have it first in accessible, readable. A lot of like screen readers are able, like you need to have, for visually impaired people, a way to read that flyer. Also, you want to have pictures that represents all abilities, and kind of you want to see yourself in that flyer. You want to Google a little bit about disabilities before your first practice. So if you know that there's certain types of disability that are going to show up, it would be a good idea to just get the broad strokes again. You're not looking to become a doctor here and overlearn, because then it would be kind of intimidating for the person who showed up. But just kind of a little bit of, so you're in the common area. So now you want to have a little conversation. You want to look them in the eye, you want to use their name, you want to talk to them about their expectations, any concerns that they may have. And I guess I put expectations twice, so it must be really important because I put it twice. But that's a good way to get to know them a little bit better, see how they're feeling. Are they ready to go? Are they still apprehensive? And just kind of read them and understand at that point. A lot of people, and this goes for parasport programs and also everyday life, the golden rule, I say, when you're dealing with people with disabilities, is you don't jump to help someone and all of a sudden like start touching them or pushing their wheelchair. You want to ask people, how may I help you? And what that does is it gives the power to the person with the disability to say, no, thank you, I'll do it myself. or they can direct the person in how to help so it's done safely. And too many times I've been kind of grabbed and I'm very ticklish, which isn't helpful. So I was on an escalator once and someone started grabbing me, and it turned out okay, but it's just not a good idea. So just a quick, how can I help you? And that works in the coaching world. If someone's gonna like get fitted into a sledge for sledge hockey, just ask them. And then if a person with a disability, and that's my PWD stands for persons with disability, is joining an integrated program. So you're going to have a group of able-bodied people and then include person with a disability. That can be a little bit daunting for the person with the disability, and they'll feel like they're the center of attention. And so what you want to do is kind of turn down the volume on that kind of focus on the person. And to do that, maybe you can explain to the group of people before about the person with the disability, what they're showing up, and this is how we treat people with respect. And you as the coach are the leader, so you want to give respect to the person with the disability. And if you can, because the coach will be busy doing the practice, if you could set that person up with a buddy who's going to show them the first day. And that is a great idea to get them engaged in that social network as well. Okay, so we're also here on the communicating. This is, you don't want to be too fearful about saying the wrong thing. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. People will tell you, and just stop using the wrong stuff, and everyone's going to give you a pass for the first time. What you really want to do is build trust in the safe and enjoyable environment. And I think all the speakers tonight have talked about that. So it's that trust that is going to get the people back time and time again. So what you want to do is get to know the athlete first. And if you know the sport, then that's going to be the key to the coaching success. And knowing the athlete, you're going to get their goals, and you're going to help to work with them. So you have to put aside your ambitions for high performance, or you see a future Paralympian. You want to talk to the athlete and the parents about their goals. Okay, so the value of inclusion is good for the whole group. And I think one of the most challenging things about coaching in different abilities is that you have to change the rules sometimes, or the speed or the time. So the way that it's called differential learning, you have a group of people with this ability, and then you have someone with another ability. Then how do you make it all work for everyone so they're challenged and having fun? So you can change the rules. You have to be creative. You can change the environment. You can do whatever you want. So just as long as everyone's kind of being slightly challenged and that they're all having fun. So that's easier said than done, and it comes with time as well. Besides the inclusion programs, there are programs with just certain types of disabilities, like wheelchair rugby, for example, and there's pros and cons to both. So if you have a disability and you can go into a group of peers all with a similar disability and share your experiences, that can be a great peer support network, and you don't feel like you're being watched by all the other kind of able-bodied people. So, but then if you're getting good and the coaching is with another able-bodied group, then you have to kind of go, and then you make new friends. So they all have kind of pros and cons. And then if your coach is talking about getting into the technical aspects, then you've all won. Then you've dropped the disability. You're just trying to maximize your performance. And that includes things like equipment and working with your strengths. So some of the challenges can be like transportation. So just getting to the program is a victory. And when you get there and you do use specialized equipment, too often I see people don't know enough about the equipment. And if you are uncomfortable and you leave and you're sore for a couple of days, you might not come back. So you really have to kind of educate yourself on any specialized equipment. The goal is to leave with a smile. What happens at the end of the day is, for quality programs, is that the participants leave with a smile and they have that feeling of freedom and it just sells itself. They forget the wheelchair or their disability, all their problems, and it's the best. I coach the minor hockey para program, and to see that team get together and build skills, and they've got a social network now, and I know that it's just that freedom of getting out on the ice. They just love it. So, and I love doing it. These are the resources: coaching athletes with disability at the NCCP, free all week, and then the Jumpstart, coaching kids of all abilities. I don't know, how much time do we have left there, Christy?
You have about 4 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, what I'll do is rifle through these, and these are these first ones have actual specialized para coaching for this sport. So CADS does a really good job. Equestrian has a national program, so does boccia, and a lot of that is because boccia has an NSO and it's a Paralympic sport. This goalball, they have one, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball. And then once you get to para ice hockey, they don't actually have an NCCP course, but they do have hockey resources, and para hockey is growing leaps and bounds. But if you're a coach and you don't want to coach the ones with the NCCP, there still are resources out there. So there's swimming, Nordic, and we have programs in all of these. Parasailing, great sports. I didn't really get a chance to talk about the different disabilities for every sport. But I know all these programs, the coach is going to do everything to include. We are more about grassroots and participation, but if people have that high performance ambition, then they will do everything they can to get the resources to them. So these are our coaches here in Nova Scotia, so thanks to them. And I will leave it to you, Kirsty, to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, and sorry, I should have been more clear. You had like 4 minutes and then time for questions. So if you want to go over the different disabilities, I think that would be really helpful, and then we can answer any questions that come in.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I should have done this before now. So really, the boccia is a Paralympic sport, and it is for more higher needs population. So they have even if you can't use your arms and your legs, they'll have these people that help adjust the ramp, and based on your eye movement, they will actually adjust, and there's a whole communication about that. And sometimes you'll see a hat and they can hold the ball with the little hand that's off. So this is for kind of the more disabled persons. Goalball is for visually impaired. The wheelchair rugby, you have to have 4 limbs affected for you to be allowed to play. This is wheelchair basketball. They all have a whole classification system, but really it's for able-bodied and disabled. And the more disabled you are, the lower number that you have. And so they do classification. You're only allowed to have 15 points on the floor at once. So they have this big mix of disabled and maybe able-bodied in the Canada Games. Sledge hockey, able-bodied, disabled. It helps to have some use of your arms, but as you can see in the picture, she has a push bar on it, and there's rules for, we have a guy that plays every week, and he tapes the sticks on, and he's not able to push himself, but he has a pusher, and he's able to play hockey games because we have rules for the pusher of what they are allowed to do and what they aren't. And that kind of underscores what I said earlier about being able to change the rules so that everybody can participate. Swimming is the great equalizer. You get in the water and everyone can participate that way. You've seen in the Paralympics. Sitting volleyball isn't really for paraplegics or people that need like cushions. They don't have, you got to have a little bit of balance for this. So for single leg amputees, it's very popular. The power chair soccer just started in Zatzman, and that's, so there's no team sports available for the power chairs. So this has been really successful. We've had up to 17 people on Wednesday nights, and this is a great shot of these 2 friends knew each other since elementary, and now we have an extra chair, and it's the first time they've ever been able to play sports together. Parasailing, we take everybody. We have straws that you can put in your mouth to sip and puff to control the boat so you can sail independently. or you could have an invisible disability and all your limbs are working and get time out on the boat as well. Table tennis is sitting and standing and cognitive. Wheelchair curling, you have to be in a wheelchair. Athletics, as you see in the Paralympics, has many, many different disabilities types. And para canoe is, yeah, I'm not 100% about the para canoe. It's kind of a growing sport for me. It's just started a new program at Lake Bannock, so we're learning as we go. Para archery is the oldest sport in the Paralympics. And para rowing is another. Sitting and standing are allowed, and this is the world champion Andrew Todd from Dartmouth. And then surfing is more of participation at Martinique once a year, and they will lift you on the big surfboard and take you out of the water, and there's lines of people on either side that will keep the surfing straight. They didn't do it for Hurricane Teddy, which is probably a good thing. And then last but not least, the adaptive water skiing has, I put the logo over the best part, unfortunately, but there's, you don't have to have any strength in your arms at all to participate in this. The whole thing is made to pull the sit ski up. It's got some side skis so you won't fall over, and you're able to experience that joy on a hot summer day, which is great. So yeah, there's a lot there, and there's a lot of kind of, once we know your situation, then we kind of work with you to find a spot for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. And it's so great to see so many different para sports available to athletes, and a couple questions have come in already. So I will get to them. So the first one is asking about if, like, is there a para archery program in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are working on it, I will say. We have, there's an Osprey Archery Club, and it's out by Prospect, and we have a gentleman who's the head coach for the Invictus Games, and he's looking to start a program. It's still not wheelchair accessible, and we're looking to get grants to get a kind of that, it's an old building, so it needs a bathroom and a ramp. But, and then we also have a younger athlete. She's in high school, and she's starting to join archery clubs around Halifax, and it looks like her coach is going to start a para program too. So stay tuned. That looks like it's coming on.
Great. And a few more. So are there minimum training requirements for coaches required by Sport Nova Scotia? Example, for Hockey Canada community coaching level for sledge hockey, for coaches in those sports you flashed through at the end. So are there minimum training requirements to be a para sport coach?
Yeah, especially in hockey. Yeah, there's those hockey standards. So you're going to have the criminal background check, the code of conduct. You have to take, like, all the coaches had to take those. So hockey does a really good job. All the other sports will say to do that as well, but I know in hockey they double check and make sure you have it, and you can't continue unless you have it. I don't know if the other sports are that on it right now, so we do encourage all that and to be trained, but you definitely want to get your criminal background check done, and yeah, and then that's a good starting point.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question came in about reffing. So is there any support or possibilities for para reffing, like, or to ref as someone who has a disability?
Oh, so they have a disability themselves, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, I
Oh,
believe that's what they're asking.
yeah, I think anything is possible for sure. Like if the game can be called with fairness and justice, and there's no like, there's certain things for fairness that has to be kind of met. But if that is all met, then of course. So we've had wheelchair basketball refs that are in wheelchairs. We've had sledge hockey refs that are in sledges. So definitely possible for that.
Awesome. And okay. Oh, someone just asked where in Nova Scotia are they looking for para archery? So I believe you said Halifax.
That's right. Yeah, there's two that I know about, and actually there's three. There's out in Pictou. They do. There's a group there called Let Abilities Work, and they're an amazing group together with a motivated leader coach. And they've done archery over the years. They've done many things actually. So they're doing archery there. Also out Osprey Club in Prospect Way, and then in Dartmouth in different locations.
Awesome. And then,
And I could just say there's more information all on parasportns.com. And it's got all the sports. And then if you click on it, it'll take you to all the programs and all the opportunities for all those. So for each of the 17 sports, there might be, like in sledge hockey, there's 9 programs. So you can find all the information by kind of going through that way.
awesome. I'll put that website in the chat box, and someone else just sent a website that is a slightly more technical course through the IPC Academy. So I'll put that link in here as well. And then there's one last question. So do you have any advice for someone that is able-bodied, how they would coach para-athletes?
Yeah, that's, well, there's the journey and all those steps, but also kind of getting, like if you're an athlete, then become a coach and you know that sport, and then you're going to coach the adaptive way, you definitely want to get into the wheelchair or the racing machine, the sledge, so that you can understand, because it is a lot of times a different game. In coaching, wheelchair curling, for example, it sounds like the same, but there are smaller differences. So I would say to get in and do the sport yourself.
Great. And someone else just asked a question. So what if your sport is not represented in parasport?
Yeah, that's a problem. We are doing, well, it could be an opportunity for that person to start a program. They all start at some way. So a lot of that's all it takes sometimes. So there's no rules that we can't start something for sure. And maybe we have started it and it's just on a pause. All these programs ebb and flow. Some are on their way up, some are top, and some kind of are on their way down, depending on the people. So really what's not there today might be there next week.
Great, thank you. And does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to use the raise hand function or type in the Q&A chat box. And I just threw in the Parasport Nova Scotia website and also the IPC Academy course that was recommended by a coach. But if there's no more questions, we will wrap up day 3. So thank you so much, Paul, for providing us some more insight into parasport and the sports that are available and how we can become parasport coaches. We really appreciate this information. And again, this will be posted on our YouTube, so feel free to share this with anyone you would like and any coaches that would like to learn more about these topics. And we hope.
Thank you, Kirsty, and thanks to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And we hope to see you guys tomorrow on day 4. So thank you. Happy National Coaches Week.
Thank you.